Hello, what's going on? It's Kevin here. And I did not forget anyone. I did not forget about the channel or anything. It's just that after putting that first video up, I said, I think I'm going to have to approach this differently. And so the way I've decided to go about doing this is by creating a topic sheets, basically, of things I can actually give more information about and then not feel like I'm just talking about my feelings. Because there was a part of me that was just like, bruh, you're gonna come on here every day and talk about your feelings. You better do something about it. And that's just me talking to myself, right? Me communicating with me. But communicating with someone else, I still want the practical element to be there. And so that's just me being as loving to you as I am to me. So what I'm going to talk about is a conversation I had with my cousin, actually. Kind of interesting because my cousin's in a position where I like to say is very good and flexible. Why do I say this? Because she's a teacher. My cousin is a teacher, has a certificate. Yeah, it's going to differ state to state, but that's her specialty and can be a teacher pretty much anywhere. So I think that really works out in her favor. So what I've done here is I've created a list, though, to answer the question she asked me. Now, for her, it was a little bit simpler, but I said, well, for other people, just the base of what you really need to move from wherever you are to another location, right? I went cross country, and I'm talking about full-on transition here, not just vacation. So keep this in mind, right? So I made a list of 2, 4, 6, 8 things I think very necessary. So 8 necessities here. If you're thinking of moving, so if you're thinking of embarking and never returning back to your home, so where you live at your house with your parents, whoever that might be, however the house might be. All right, so we'll just get into it. So number 1, you have to have the mentality to move and be away on your own. You have to literally be mentally ready. So it's not like you're gonna leave and then just ta-da, like you're gonna just, your mind's just automatically gonna wrap around everything. Your mind's gonna take time wrapping and like embracing everything and wrapping around, letting things hit it. So it's gonna kind of be like a little bit of a shock, but it's not gonna be a heavy shock. It'll be kind of subtle, and it's not something that's immediately noticed. It's just kind of like, whoa, this is here and this is here, and it's important to be very aware, like be cognizant of the new location, of the trees, of the different air. And some things are similar, right? Like different smells, like of cars, maybe some like squirrels, certain birds, certain animals, just in general, might be the same, and then some things are gonna be different, right? So be mindful of how you feel mentally going into a new location. But even before then, if you really think you can handle being away from whatever you've been in, especially if you're coming out of like a good situation at your house, you want to be mindful. I smell something. It smells like Lysol. It's just like directly in my nostrils for some reason. But anyway, that's very, very important, like cleaning supplies. But anyway, that's very, very important to have yourself in a mental state that is willing to embrace any challenges that might come along during your travels or when you get to the location, or that you might have leaving your current location. You have to be immediately aware of these things and just be able to constantly acknowledge that choice of moving is yours, and that a lot comes with moving, a lot of responsibility. So the second thing is a word I actually mentioned, but the willingness, right? So once you feel mentally prepared, like you're like, look, I'm going to do this. I don't need to live in this situation anymore. And I don't want to live in this situation anymore. the wanting part is very important, because you have to, like, if you don't need to live in a situation, but you're kind of in the motion of like not minding living in that situation that you don't need to live in. And when I say don't need to live in a situation, I'm talking like on like a dire, like it's pretty, like you really don't need to be in that situation. Like it's just like not good for you. And then boom, you're still in it, but you can get out. So that need is what needs to be acknowledged, and then that want has to push it. There has to be a drive to get up out of there, and that's the willingness. You got to be willing to just be like, yo, bump this, I'm leaving. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to shock yourself the way you need to shock yourself to really wake up and be out and about doing what, I mean, you can be doing. Like you can be living a much stressless life, a way more stressless life, and then be happier. At least experience more moments of happiness. Believe me, you do not want to be living a stressful life if you don't have to. Right? So you have to be willing to make that motion out of your space that's, you know, like uncomfortable. You know, a lot of people know when it's time to leave their parents' house, one. And a lot of people know when they have a bad housemate or bad roommate. They know. If you've been living with them for more than a year now, you know what you will and will not live with, especially as you get older. When you go to like your different dorm rooms and experience different living partners, you're going to be like, all right, I can deal with this. I can deal with that. I don't need to deal with this. I don't want to deal with this. I'm not willing to deal with any of the nonsense. I'm willing to deal with my ideal life. And so you progress in these areas. And believe me, there are a lot of people that are trying to live in the best ways possible, and you'll find them, but you got to pull yourself out of wherever you are, and you have to have the willingness to do that. The next thing is you have to have a grand like reason or a necessity, and something I touched on already. I said the necessity, the need. You have to have the grand reason or necessity. Like if you have your own room in your parents' house and it's really not that bad, like you come home, they ask you how you are, and you just get mad because like your parents are like seem like they're caring for you. You don't know why, or it seems like you got into some like weird conversation with them. But my point is, if you're able to like literally have your own room and people really don't bother you in your home, and people actually like you, or they just really don't mind you, like they like you, don't mind you, like not they don't like you but don't mind you, because that's a different thing. If people just have a lot of negative energy towards you but don't mind you, then it's kind of, and you're living with them, then it's like it's like because if you have your own room, then it's like you can kind of close the door, lock them out. You don't have to worry too much. You can still do your own thing without being interrupted. Now if you're in a middle space that can be interrupted and flow through, then ideally you want to be like, all right, I need to get up out of here, because you don't want to be in a space that can be constantly interrupted. That's supposed to be where you recover and, you know, help yourself, get some rest, some peace time, some me time, as people like to say. But I think that's important. You got to have that time for yourself too. And so that's what your home base is supposed to be contributing to. And so if you're not able to really get that, then that's really actually a necessity too, especially depending on the housemates and roommates you're living with. And so keep that in mind, that necessity and grand reason has to be something that is going to propel you forward into the life you really want, meaning that your habits are on point already. Like you're living a really awesome life. And when I say like living an awesome life, I mean like you have healthy habits, so that you're not just saying, oh, like if you're getting like wasted all the time, and then you're like if you're stressing yourself out basically, and then already going into a stressful situation, then this list is honestly not, it's gonna like help your mind get going, but you got to get your mentality. You got to start off with one, get your mentality right, and to help your mentality, you know, you got to make sure everything's balanced within you, right? So necessity or grand reason, that's the third reason. The fourth thing really is the part of moving, right? So you have to make sure you have some savings, a steady job at the moment, so that you have like money coming in, so you'll be able to use that money when you're leaving, on the road, and when you get to wherever you're going, which we'll get to. So, and your bills paid. You want to have your bills paid, like that next month's bills. You want to have them paid, and then you want to have like, I'd recommend working like 2 weeks give your 2 weeks notice going into that next month. So then you have like 2 weeks, so you get that check coming in the middle of the week, or even like the middle of that month, and then the end of the month, so that you're like, all right, you put in your 2 weeks and then you work those 2 weeks. So then you have 2 checks coming in, so that your bills are paid like 2 months in advance in a sense. You see what I'm saying? So like half of that first month was work, but you're traveling. So then the next half of that month, you'll be already at your next location, able to transition properly and have some time to work for yourself and meet people and do whatever you have to do, because we're going to get to the next step, right? But you have to make sure you do what you have to do or plan to do when you get to the location. So you have to have some savings, at the least savings, but at the most savings. At the least, you want to have your steady job, and that's also you can have your bills paid. And if you do it in that process, then you can have your bills paid for the next 2 months, still have a little bit over, and then still have that month and a half to do some transitioning, some serious transitioning. And that's it's gonna go on to the next thing, is go-to location. Preferably a rent-free situation. I'm very grateful to have a family member out here in this state, so that I got to go to them. And that's been very, very helpful, because there's no way I'm trying to just leave out without having a place to stay. Granted, I had to have a tent, and that's an avenue that, like I said, you have to have a willingness when you're transitioning, right? So that's an avenue. I'm like, all right, but I'm not trying to be up in a tent. You feel me? Because I'm qualified. I put a lot of work in to get degrees, and I am not a lazy person, so I have my experiences. Like my resume is, I'm not saying it's like crazy, but it's all right. It's enough to get me a very decent paying job. My experiences are enough to get me a very decent paying job, and allow me to live well. So just keep that in mind. The reason I'm saying that is because I actually, it's interesting. I talk to some people that have good jobs, and they're like, they paid their dues, and they're talking about education, and I'm like, that's what's up. I'll put mine in too. You feel me? And yeah. So I'm just saying, circumstance is very important. Know what you're leaving with. Know what you are leaving without. Know the atmosphere, the climate, the economy of your field that you want to work in, because they have jobs. Like you can get find a customer service job, and you can get paid decent. The rent is something to be very aware of, right? So that's a part of this whole step. The go-to location, preferably rent-free. Just gotta know where you're going, and that goes on into the next three. Actually tie in very, very much together, right? So you gotta know where you're going. It's great to have a go-to location, though. That's the key thing. Go-to location. The next thing is discipline and research. Once you get to your go-to location, you have to be ready to do a lot of research about the jobs, about everything. You should have actually, if you're thinking about it, should have been doing this thing 3-4 months ago. I started doing all that stuff way back, and I didn't do it just out of the state where I was at. I was actually doing it in the state where I was. It's just that, you know what? There was just, like I said, necessity and grand reason. I had to make sure I had to move out, because that apparently was, I don't want to say it wasn't the place for me, but at the time it was not seemingly the place for me, and so I had to move out. And it's a nice state too. It's a nice state. I mean, really. But anyway, circumstances. So discipline to research, and the discipline to go out by foot. Preferably, you want to work locally to your go-to location. driving out like 40 minutes to an hour, especially on high traffic roads, is not ideal. Yeah, I do not recommend that, especially if you just come into a place. Unless you got like the savings to do that for like the first, until you get like, a few paychecks, and then it's like normal, and then you're just like dealing with traffic. You don't care about the financial part. But if you're local and you do have to think about the financial part, then I recommend definitely just kind of walking about initially. I did some driving about, and then I'm telling you, way better to do it local. So if you can find something local, work with it. And so the next thing is patience and listening, right? I've done a lot of listening. I always like to listen. It's very important. And yeah, I am patient with everything because it takes time to get jobs. I've applied to jobs months ago, heard back from some. Applied to jobs now. Some places, they vary in how they respond. I'm not talking about HR in this video, seriously. And recruiters, I know some recruiters, and the way they tell me they do their job in communication with HR, it's a whole nother situation, right? So a whole nother conversation. But yeah, that patience, and you gotta be listening. So listening to the locals, and being patient with just the job hunting process, because you can't get flustered, and you can't get worried. Realistically, just because there are a lot of jobs out there, and it's just about figuring the best route for you. So take your time. Even me, there's been jobs I'm like, you know what, I've been taking my time applying to jobs. Like, I've restructured how I apply to jobs, because I realized that some places, like, if you really look at the description and then really think about your experiences and then think about what the details are once you're in them, it's like, and it's like a few things that go through my mind. I'm like, well, I definitely think that there might be someone actually, like, that's someone else's field. And then there's some areas where I'm just like, I can really definitely do this, and this aligns with what I'm doing very well and with my experiences and my specialty. So just be mindful, because some places you don't have to apply to. Some places you definitely should apply to, and be mindful of how you're applying. And this ties in, like I said, all to basically about the go-to location, right? Be geographically aware. So if you're gonna be going somewhere, just know a little bit more about the local area, like, a few miles about it. It's good to have people in the area that you can communicate with and that can inform you about just the area. Because you go to a new state, or really a new state, there's a lot going on. And so just be mindful. Yeah. Make sure you're aware about what's going on locally. And that, somebody called, but it was a telemarketer. And so that's really all there is. The 8 things that are, I think, very necessary before you head out. Your mentality got to be on point. The willingness to do what you got to do once you leave your location. The necessity or grand reason for leaving. Your savings, your steady job, and your bills paid. That's got to be situated, because those first 2 months are real. Like, you gotta be like on the grind, applying to jobs. And that's where go-to location, discipline, and research come in, because you gotta have the discipline and research and the patience and listening at your go-to location, so that you can learn about the local area. The geographical awareness is so key, because you gotta know the climate of the economy of your field, at least just of the things going on socially. Because if you want to be there, it helps a lot. And then you just go into the area where you are, and you should be all right. Then you'll be all right. And I think that sets good stepping stones, like a really good stepping stone. All right, so those are my 8 tips for anyone that's thinking of making that transition out of state. Now, like I said, it varies, and the reason why I brought this up was because this conversation I had with my cousin, teacher. And so if you have like a really like niche specialty area that can be very simple to transfer into another state and you can get into your lifestyle, I mean, go ahead, do it up. Still keep the list in mind of the 8 things, the 8 necessities, the 8 base necessities of traveling or leaving your state to a new state. But that's the whole idea, right? Just have these base 8, and then I think that you'll be fine. Other than that, I would not encourage you to leave until these are complete to a very strong degree, meaning the mentality, the willingness, the necessity, and grand reason, and saving, steady jobs, and bills paid. Those 4 things are necessities, guaranteed. The go-to location, the discipline, research, patience, and listening, and geographical awareness. Those are the other 4 necessities that are gonna come into play heavily really right along with the other 4. So it should help. All right, that's my take on it all. I'm out of here. I gotta get some food.